Okay, go ahead and have a seat. I have Colin. He's gonna be just videoing the whole process and what else while the digging we put it now. I think I need a one fold on
Yeah, for long. What did then whatever time?
yeah. So you want to make the brows longer and then you want them to be fuller. Gotcha. Do you have an idea of the techniques that you want?
I prefer you recommend me if I just do real homes metro.
Yeah. Do you normally fill in your eyebrows?
I do it.
A little quiet. Did you fill in your brows today? Will you come in or no?
No, nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
And I try not to. Oh,
Yeah.
and
So normally I would have the client comes in and have the eyebrows filled in just so that way I can take a look at how they're normally used to with their eyebrows before I start the procedure. Obviously, you need to do consultation with the client, asking them a bunch of fact-finding questions like, do you fill in your eyebrows every day? Did you fill in your brows when you come in and things like that, and take a picture of their brows so that way you're aware of what they're used to seeing their brows every day. So right now her brows are numbed for about 30 minutes already, so I'm gonna wipe away the numbing cream and then we're gonna go ahead and measure the eyebrows. Normally, before I even settle for a technique for the client's brow, what I normally do is I have to measure out the brows to see if the eyebrows fit certain points of our golden ratio measurements. That way I would be able to figure out what technique is suitable for them, because obviously if the client is lacking brow hair in certain part, or if they have too much asymmetry, that's the hair strokes technique obviously won't work. That they would have to go with the ombre powder technique, or if the client's looking for more kind of like a defined shade, then ombre powder, and that's where you would need to see how they fill in their eyebrows in order to kind of like figure out the correct technique for them. But before you even settle for a technique, I would suggest to measure out the brows first to see what the measurements are, because sometimes if they have good natural brow hair but the golden ratio is off, then maybe you have to combine that with the combo of hair strokes and ombre powder. So first, I'm gonna find the middle point and then the fronts of the brows. Remember to only find one side because we're going to mirror it over. And then the length of the brows would be from the cupidable of the lips to the outer corner of the eye. And you really want to stop right at the outer corner and not at the lid skin, because sometimes certain clients, like for mature skin, especially if their eyelids drop, then you don't want to go with the fold. So you want to always go with the eye itself. In this case, it's fine. And then I'm gonna find the bottom point, and then I'm gonna bring it all the way over. Make sure you're holding your string nice and straight. I would use the ring finger as an anchor point, so that way your strings will stay nice and straight. And then the front, and then the highest point of the brow. And then now I'm gonna grab my ruler and I'm gonna mirror this over like this. And then I'm gonna put like a point right here. And to find the arch, it's gonna be the length of the eye. And then you're just gonna kind of like press on it. And then put your string over to mark. And then same thing with over here, press, and then mark. Okay, so now we have the first point, the second point, third, fourth, and fifth. So as we can see, you're gonna try to like go from this point, like this point to this point. And then same thing, this would cross the under, like from here to here, it would cross. It's not gonna like cross exactly, but this is kind of like just to give you a frame, like an outline of what your shape is. And then same thing with over here. If you feel like using the pencil to draw it out, it's easier. You can lay the client down and then just draw. For me, I like to use the string to just kind of like shape first and then have them laid out later. After I measure out the golden ratio, I always like to show the client what the measurements mean, because sometimes if you measure and then you lay them down, you draw the shape right away, and then you give them the mirror, they'll take a look at the shape. Sometimes they don't understand what the shape means and how it fits with their facial features. So I usually like to explain this part with the client, just so that way the communication is clear, and when you involve the client into the process, they tend to kind of like understand why certain shape might work for their facial features and why certain part might not work for their facial features according to the measurement. So the front will keep them where they are with your eye. And one thing is that you don't want the tail to just lower. I would say powder would be better. Yeah. Okay. So her eyebrows fit pretty nicely in our shape in terms of like where the front's supposed to start, the tail isn't drooping, the arch stays where it's at. The only thing that I'm seeing is that from mid to tail, it's a little bit thinner, but it's not too bad. But she likes a little bit of longevity, so we know that with the hair strokes technique by itself, it doesn't really give the longevity, especially on the part if there's least hair. It's going to be more visible when each of the strokes start fading. So we decide on the combo technique where I'm gonna be doing strokes in the front and then powder out. And the reason why we can do the strokes in the front is that she naturally has eyebrow hair in the front and kind of like to mid, so the hair strokes would blend in really nicely. On cases where there isn't natural brow hair, sometimes hair strokes only will look pretty empty unless the client is so used to eyebrows looking kind of like sparse already, a little bit empty and stuff, then hair strokes only might work. But if they're looking for number one, longevity, number two, a little bit more defined, I would say added with powder. And in that case, we should combine the strokes and powder like a combo. So I'm gonna do some hair strokes in the front and then powder out. And when I draw the shape, I'd like to sort of like draw it like this, but because we're gonna do strokes in the front, so I'm not gonna press the pencil too heavy, but I'm sort of like just moving a little by little. I'm not gonna go as low just because we don't want any droop. And also down the road, if like her natural brow hair grow out, it's fine too. Like she can either pluck or keep them, whatever she likes. So literally you just follow the line that you just draw or measure. And don't worry if you can't get like a perfect line right now, because you're still gonna have to sit the client up and adjust the shape a little bit, because we have to work on the symmetry as well. So don't worry if you can't really get it nice and straight right now. Ideally, what you want to focus on is making your line thin, and you need to sharpen your pencil to the point that it's sort of like as thin as like a blade. So that way your line isn't too thick. And when I draw, I tend to like lift the skin up like this, lift and stretch, so that way you can get your pencil to draw as precise as possible. And I would recommend to kind of like do short strokes like this. So that way if you end up having to adjust, then it's easier. Same thing with like later on, you're gonna need to wipe it a little bit to adjust the shape or the symmetry of the brow. Okay. So after I draw the shape, it's gonna be hard to know if they're like matching symmetry or not until you actually sit the client up. And especially if they have matured skin, their skin will stretch out when they lay down, and when you sit up it's different. In this case, it's not matured skin, but it's always better to sit the client up. So when you sit the client up, here I have a Q-tip that has alcohol in it. So I like to use alcohol rather than just water, because it helps me to clean the line more precise. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna try to like work it, make sure that each of the point is as symmetrical as possible. So now I'm gonna make the shape as symmetrical as possible. So I already make sure that both sides are symmetrical. And then now what you're gonna do is you're gonna try to, take out some of these hair that are sitting outside the shape, just to groom them, because if you don't clean these hair that are sitting outside the shape, it's gonna make the brows look pretty messy, and it won't give that nice defined shape, especially for those that are doing just ombre powder. It's better if you clean the hair around the shape as close to your line as possible. That's gonna make your shape looks even more sharp and defined. And sometimes after you clean, you might need to like trim them. You can tilt your blade down like this and then trim them, or you can use the scissors to trim. And then I always like to re-outline a little bit, just because now that the hair is all cleaned up, sometimes we might miss certain spots. And remember, your outline needs to be as clear and thin as possible. And then you're gonna use one of these. It's just an angle brush that you can get anywhere. And then I have the concealer that on the brush. And then you're gonna kind of like go underneath the shape to sharpen it even more. And the point where the outline, the black pencil meets the concealer is where your needle is gonna be for the outline. Some people outline or conceal the top as well, just to give them more clarity. For me, I don't do the top, I only do the bottom, but you can do the top if you want to. Since this case is like a combo, I usually draw the stroke out first, and then I would go on the needle on the stroke itself. So after I put the concealer on, have the client sit up, check everything is good, lay them back down, and this is where I'm going to be drawing the strokes. And since we're only doing like a combo of strokes in the front and then powder out, I'm going to draw the strokes in the front first. I'm not gonna draw the spine because the spine is where we're gonna be doing powder. And this is nano strokes, so make sure you have spaces in between the strokes, so that way you can go back and add more fluff to it. And when you do nano strokes in the front, it's okay if the strokes are longer and like touching the frame and sort of like curve a little bit to hug the frame. That's gonna give it more kind of like a fluffy look. Okay, so when we're talking about color theory is very in-depth, and a lot of time you're not gonna understand about it right away. It does require a little bit of experience, especially if you're learning a new pigment line or using a new pigment line. You kind of have to see how each pigment heals on certain types of skin. It could be the same pigment, but on two different skin, it's gonna heal to different results. So that does require experience. For me, I like the Even Flow or Perma Blend line. I've been using this line for years, and I know how they heal after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 to 6 months, or even 1 to 2 years or even more. So I'm comfortable with Perma Blend and Even Flow. So I can only speak of this pigment line, but if you're using another pigment line, then you want to make sure that you know how each of the pigment heals. So for her case, I would go with Terra. Terra is a color, the darkest color of Even Flow, but it's not going to be that dark. Her natural brow hair is going to be even darker than Terra, so I'm going to add maybe just a little bit of blackish brown into it to sort of like add a little bit of enhancement into the dark brown. If I go for like concentrated strokes, but for now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna dot along the shape where the strokes are, and then where you're not gonna be doing the strokes, then you start to outline your shape. Make sure each of your dots is super close. I'm literally just letting the needle does its work, because I just want to keep the outline, remember, for now. Like, I don't want it to heal with the outline. It's sort of like an invisible outline when it's healed. And this is the bottom, the top. Right here, I'm not gonna like put dots here, but rather I'm just gonna do really far away from each other, because we want the top to be fluffy. Like, we don't want the top to show an outline. Not until this point. And remember to stretch, pull it up, and then stretch it out. You never want the brow to sit on the brow bone, because when it sits on the brow bone, a lot of time it can make the end really dark. Okay, so now that I have the frame set, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with concentrated stroke. Start like an airplane, go really slow, steady. The client's gonna feel a little bit in this part just because it's strokes and it's concentrated, but it's only the first pass. And then as you're going here, you need to flick your needle out so that way it doesn't look like it ended short. And flick it out like this. And same thing, you're gonna start here and then flick it out as you're approaching the tip. And the key is to go really slow, and your speed again needs to be pretty high, but you need to control your depth, because with the concentrated technique it's easy to go deep. And when you go too deep, it can be like really ashy and like hard to correct. When you're done with the strokes, don't wipe. I would go in with exactly the same speed with powder. Faster speed, faster movement will make the powder look more airy. Slower speed, slower hand movement will make the powder look more like dots. So it just really depends on what look you're trying to shoot for. I just done with the first pass. Usually I don't wipe, I just let the pigment sit and then I put numbing over like this. And this is TAC 45, so what it's gonna do is it's gonna absorb into the skin super fast and it'll just be numbed. So I usually just let the pigment sit, but if you're new, I would strongly suggest you just wipe so that way you can check your pressure before you apply numbing. The left brow, I'm sitting on the right and I'm just going backward. I'm going from the tail to the front and I'm placing the dots really close to each other, almost kind of like drawing a line. And as I'm getting closer to where the strokes are, again, I'm placing it out like this. And remember to flick it out when you get to the tip of the strokes. And go as slow but steady. So here I have the glide, but honestly you can use anything. You can even use the A&D ointment. Just don't use Vaseline or petroleum jelly. Use either glide or A&D ointment. It's gonna help you to wipe the skin smoother, and you can see where your pigments lay. It's not a good idea if you have the brows all clogged up with dry pigment sitting on the top, because then you won't know which one is the one that you have implanted correctly. So I would say wipe it really good like this. So this is a nice background for the brows already. This is only one pass. Yeah, and then you can see the strokes right now. It's still late, so we need to go over it. I need to go over this a few times. Okay. So you can start from the middle, go really slow, over and over and over, and then flick it out. Same thing with down here. And the speed of the machine is very slow. It's sitting at 4.0. And that's really the key. You have to go very slow with shaded nano strokes. With concentrated or compact strokes, your speed has to be fast, but your hand is slow. For the strokes, I went 2 passes on each stroke, and then for the third pass, I'm gonna add in the fluff. And to add in the fluff, I'm gonna go back into the main stroke again, still with slow speed, but the main stroke will have 3 passes by now. And then the fluff will be one pass. Go back to the main stroke next to it the third time. And see this empty spaces between here. I'm gonna create a fluff. And then go over the next one, and so on. And then what you're gonna do to fill the rest of the brow, you're gonna change the speed back to faster speed, which is the 6 point, or it could be 5 point something, because I want the rest to be kind of like light and airy, sort of like soft powder. And just blend it in with the strokes. And I'm gonna fill the tail more as well, since there's less hair on the tail. And sometimes when you go with the powder, you don't have to always go towards yourself, but you can also fill in this way as well, like diagonally on the shape, just to fill in certain parts like this. So now that we're done, you can put a little bit of glide over and then just make sure you wipe really clean. And then what I usually do in the last part of the process is to apply the color boost agent. This will sit directly on the stroke. And then you can even see that the strokes start appearing crisp right away. And then I will set like a paper towel over. And this is the microtone that I just put in a spray bottle. And then you spray on the brows. This will help speed up the healing process and sort of like close the pores of the skin. And let this sit for about a minute or so. I'm gonna have you keep your eyes open, okay? Your eyes blink so much.
Love it. Yes. Thank you so much. It's so good. The difference is great. I love it. Yeah.